kind of like behind the curtains, different rules. We're dealing with some of the biggest, wealthiest people on earth. Many people see them with envy
Mhm.
eyes because, they're wealthy. They shouldn't be concerned. They shouldn't be crying about anything. They got everything they need. It's not the case. I grew up with maids. I didn't grow up with my parents. I'm not close to them at all. They basically gave up me to build this empire. She said, I would give up everything I have if I had my parents when I was growing up. Institutionals manage other people's money, families manage their own. Huge difference.
Welcome to the Purpose Driven Capital Podcast, where we help you align your money with your mission and maximize your impact. Here's your host, Matt Johns.
For more than 20 years, Denny Chared has built and curated a global community of family offices and high net worth families representing hundreds of billions of dollars in private capital across the US, Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. He's the founder of DC Finance and the Family Office Circle, and he focuses on creating trusted rooms for influential family members and those who manage their wealth. Denny was wonderful, incredibly open, and definitely his charismatic self. Welcome to my conversation with Denny Chared. I've got to ask you, because I've seen you at a couple of conferences, and I know you're traveling around going to conferences all the time, but you're leading conferences all the time, and you're attending conferences all the time. You seem to be on the road all the time. How on earth do you do all that?
Oh, and we also have club events. We also have a family, besides the conferences, we have a private club of ultra high net worth who meet around the conferences, but sometimes also beyond that. So it's a lot of travel. Look, my father was a very famous guitar player. He used to go
Oh,
on,
no kidding.
on tours of like a month and a half. Yeah. So we came from music actually. So, I just, got used to it. And many times the conferences that are close to one another, we do the same week. So like LA, Palo Alto,
Mhm.
Toronto, Montreal. So like, you go on a week or two and you do that. And it comes with, there are periods of time when I'm free, December, summertime. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and you come a long way, because you started out only wanting to stay in one location when you were starting out on Wall Street as a journalist. I'm really curious though
Yeah.
to hear, how has your perspective changed from when you came into your career? I guess not even the industry, but really your career as a journalist on Wall Street, perceiving finance as you did then versus where you are now. How has that transformation kind of gone for you?
Well, I was covering reports after the trade, in the middle of the night, trying to figure out what's going on because I was back then in Israel covering Wall
Mhm.
Street and translating Alan Greenspan to English and from that to actually what he meant to say is one thing. And I feel like the family office world is a parallel universe. It's kind of like behind the
Yes.
curtains, different rules. Quiet. That's how when I first started to even understand what's going on there, I really needed to interview people, families, advisors to figure out what's going on and what
Mm.
makes them tick and what are the problems. So it's just a completely different world. I feel it helps me understand finance when I was covering Wall Street, but it's just a different world that really brings a lot of different things together, like passion, investments, like personalities, trust, and a lot of issues on
Yeah, and
Wall
very
Street.
few people have the perspective that you do now, with all the relationships that you have and that you've built over the years, and you've got this incredible Rolodex now that very few in the world can say. That knowing all these famous people who are incredibly accomplished, their families are accomplished for generations, and you've built up these conferences into something that people aspire to go to, and that takes time. That takes trust. It takes a lot of faith in you as a leader to protect what they've built up over all these years. But building that trust takes a lot of intention, and it takes something else. And I'm curious to get a little bit behind the curtain for you and what that was like at the beginning. What were you aspiring to do, and what did you actually do to build that trust and eventually grow it to where you had your first couple people coming in, and then more and more decided to join?
Interesting question. I should think about it, which I never really tried to analyze that. But I guess I'm very straightforward. So sometimes, it's too much, sometimes it's not. But I think a lot of families always are being, people talk to them and they're always so cautious that it's always so cold in the end. And when you're straightforward, they were like, all right, okay, so let's talk. So that's part of it. I think another part is just to never give up. I grew up on the right Well, for me, music and films, right? So when you grow up on Kiss, and when you grow up on Judas Priest, and when you grow up on music that keeps on telling you you can do better, and not grunge that just tells you how life sucks, really. Or when you watch Star Wars and you see Han Solo saying to C-3PO when they're trying to go to hyperspeed, he says, "Oh, the chances of making it are 1 to millions." I said, "Don't stop right there. Never tell me the odds." I think that state of mind of like, you just keep on going. Eventually you get to those places even here with families. So in the beginning, I think I was, first of all, I don't let go. I reach out, and then if I don't get a response, I'll try a different way. Back then, I was lucky to meet two families. It were just, they were very prominent families, and their next generations were bored. Now, those two folks are so busy running huge companies, but back then they were younger and bored. And that's where they started to have time to explain to me what's going on and what's missing in the conference world, what they would like to see. And then they brought their friends, and that's really how it started. So with several families that actually said, you know what, there's nothing like it here. We should talk about it. This is what I feel as a family that I don't get at a UBS conference. Doesn't matter, how amazing the service provider is, how wealthy the conference is, how many slopes they're going to be doing at a ski resort. All of that they can do by themselves. They're not, and they know that a service provider like a bank or a wealth manager has an agenda. And when we came and we said, we don't have an agenda. We'll talk about everything that hurts. And I think that with the background of being a journalist and ADHD, I think the combination is great because you don't have time to hear, boring stuff. You want to get to the interesting stuff. So I would many times think, how do I get them the real stories on stage and not just another advisor telling a nice, polite story. So the son of Robin Williams, who's a good friend, speaking about mental health is a great example. The Silversteins, the owners of the World Trade Center, speaking about 9/11 from angles you've never heard before. So I think that combination kind of created a slightly different DNA. I see a lot of people in my space, dressed up, 3-piece suits and ties all the way to their. We have a club, if you look at the logo, it's like Disney World ride. It's not none of those all, high net worth stuff that even they don't like anymore. No Latin words and scary letters in Latin and two lions holding a sword. It's like, I think we're just coming to families in a way more, we're all the same. Let's talk. Some of them are in a golden cage, and when they open up, you see a different world, and that's where you need to get
That's interesting.
So either you hate, which is fine. I have a growing group of haters as well, or you like how we are, and you actually appreciate the straightforwardness, which I think those families appreciate. Not all of them are their cup of tea, but
did you ever make any mistakes early on? Things that you had to catch yourself? I mean, you mentioned the ADHD kind of. And maybe there's a little impulsivity with that. Was there anything that happened you thought to yourself, oh, whoops, maybe I shouldn't have done that or said that, or I should have backed off?
Every single day. Every single day. I mean, I spoke to my good friend Tal from Silverstone, and he once said, you know what? I think you're the biggest problem of the company. I mean, without you, it would have been going way, way faster. Of course, jokingly. Of course, I think my problem is that many times I get offended. If you don't return my email or something. I think this is something that with families that are not used to that. I don't feel like returning your call. Well, no problem. Don't return our call. You probably don't belong in our community either. Because we don't like ego. We don't like people that are, we're dealing with some of the biggest, wealthiest people on earth. So as wealthy as you might be, and I know you're waiting for a red carpet, we've probably spoken to a wealthier fish family. So we just don't like that kind of attitude. So I've made many mistakes where I was like, maybe I should have been more calm about it and upset some people along the way, for sure. In many occasions, I would a conference where, the partners kind of annoyed us. And if we would have let things slide, we would have been in a better place. There's, for instance, this I don't regret actually, but part of the price we're paying is that, a lot of groups in the so-called family office space that are not really real would be very, let's say, flexible about their speakers and how actually families there are. We're not. And then people get upset. Oh, but in other places we're getting this and that. So sometimes maybe strategically it would have been wiser to let things slide sometimes. But definitely I made plenty of mistakes along the way with people that probably I should have interacted more calmly. But maybe that's also part of what we did achieve. So for sure. I always call my good friend Tal for advice, and he's calm and he's rational and he thinks about things. And even when I'm upset, he's like, okay, so take it easy. This is how you should react. This would, so that balance definitely helps me, but I do plenty of mistakes.
It sounds to me like you developed a really strong culture from the beginning. Was that intentional?
No. Even this whole thing wasn't intentional. I don't have this story that I woke up one night and I said, I know what I want to do. I have a vision. I was unemployed. That's basically where I was. I left journalism. I said, enough is enough. I don't want to write about others. I want somebody to write about me one day. So I cannot be here, even though it's not true in the world. There are amazing journalists. But back then, I was in Israel doing very specific kind of journalism. I didn't think you could go to places. And then I was for a while unemployed, and I did some financial writing, and one thing led to another. So there's nothing like that led me here. But I am who I am. Maybe that's part of what's missing, that a lot of people are trying to be this and that, and they're too polite and too this. And we're like, I got stupid sense of humor, which I love. I grew up on Monty Python and stuff like that, and I like that kind of attitude, and not that serious. And so again, I think some people appreciate that, and some people don't.
What are your conferences like from your eyes? Because I can imagine what they're like from my eyes, and I can certainly imagine what it's like from somebody else who's coming into their club and seeing friends and things like that. But what's it like from your eyes when you walk into the room?
Look, it's a project that I'm happy that it will end at some point so I can take it easy and relax.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of stuff going. I'm interviewing people, making sure everybody, it's a lot, and sometimes you're like in a, on a road show and on a tour. You're going from one conference, then tonight you have a dinner, then in the morning you're going to the next city. But it's exciting because I meet every dot on the map that usually I have behind me when you call me on Zoom calls. We are in 20 cities. It's just a different world. Even places that are close to one another. When you go to Dallas and Austin, different states of mind. When you go to Beverly Hills and Palo Alto. So I think that's what is exciting. What will be happening today? What will, which families will, and always the concern, will we have enough people by 9? Which is interesting. And we end up having, but there's always that pressure.
You ever look at the conferences and you get to see the interactions happening? You get to see some major things happening with the relationships that are there and the interactions that people are having. What are there any that come to your memory as something that really stands out, as something that you thought, wow, had it not been for this platform or this organizational existence, that may not have happened?
Well, I have a great example. So, for instance, so we work with philanthropic groups as well. Our conferences basically cover everything on the agenda of families: estate planning, next generation, co-investing, arts, philanthropy, marrying wealth, more importantly, divorcing it, everything you can think about. And when we work with philanthropic groups, that's part of the discussions. I always tell them, you always preach to the choir. If you're the Jewish Federation, those are going to hear you and help you out, mostly the Jewish community. If you're an Indian foundation helping kids in India that are poor, same thing, the Indian community. But when you come to what I do, it's so broad, the topics, that you actually have a chance to convince people outside of your circle. And Akshaya Petra, who's the largest Indian foundation, ended up raising capital or donations from the 7-Eleven family, which is definitely not Indian. And that's because they were sitting there listening to their story and loved it. Another example, after October 7th, I did a session about minorities and anti-Semitism. I brought 2 very known families, Spielberg and...
When you say Spielberg, you're talking about Steven, right? The famous.
So actually his sister is doing a lot of documentaries about those topics. And we did a session right after that. And, one of the most prominent families that their brand came later and said, you know what, this was amazing. I mean, I knew a lot of stuff just from here, but now I understand things I didn't understand before. So I think things like that are, what you really like. When we do sessions about mental health, and then you end up, that somebody said, you know what, I heard that discussion, and you know what, I changed something. I had somebody calling me, unfortunately, out of the blue on a video call in the weekend on Facebook that I haven't seen for years. And I was like, maybe somebody hacked their profile. I mean, nobody does that. I ended up speaking to that person, and she said, listen, a major name from the marketing world in the family office world, I got ALS. I was diagnosed. And I saw that, one of the companies that presented that is helping solve that, if you can connect us. I think these things are the special occasions that happen either at the conference itself or within the community of what we have here. So yeah, I mean, I had in our club one of the wealthiest families in Australia, together with one of the most famous families in Chicago, suddenly mentions online. We had an online session. You know what? I don't know what to do with my kids now. Do I tell them they're wealthy? I mean, they know they're wealthy. Do I give them a portion now? Am I waiting? Am I giving them anything at all? And then that other family started to talk about it, and you had a discussion between two families that suddenly opened up. So this is the kinds of things that you remember.
That's interesting. You gave a lot of examples, and not a single one of those was what I had in mind when I asked that question. I thought you were going to say there's this huge monument across the world that was built as a result of a relationship here, but all of these things were talking about the human person. Every single one of them was about the person, their experience in life, not about what they're accomplishing. With that in mind, what do you think are the most misunderstood things about working with families that are kind of in this sort of stratosphere of being behind a certain curtain or being untouchable in a sense? What do you think is most misunderstood that maybe they would want other folks to know?
Look, I think everybody obviously, many people see them with envy eyes because, they're wealthy. They shouldn't be concerned. They shouldn't be crying about anything. They got everything they need. It's not the case. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it. For instance, many of those families have their own issues. You have a lot of stuff coming here, suicide. I had somebody that I've interviewed that one of the wealthiest families in Europe, he was talking about castles that they sold. I was like, we go here and we sell a house. I don't know what it's like to sell a castle. They explained they wanted to sell the castle, but not the mountain next to it. I'm like, all right. But, at some point of the conversation, I've interviewed this guy. He's almost crying because he said, I grew up with maids. I didn't grow up with my parents. I'm not close to them at all. They basically gave up me to build this empire. And some of the stories you hear, and there's a lot of pressure for the next generation. They're always on the shadow of the first generation. Some manage to take it a million miles away from what even they have built. But for some, it's a big deal. For some, they need to fight harder than anybody else. They go to work at a company. Everybody looks at them as the kid, the owner's kid is not talented. It's just because he's, and they need to fight harder. I was speaking to Gina Diaz. I think the company is Telefonica, one of the largest, not one, I think the largest communication company in Latin America. And she said, I was a woman in the 70s, the granddaughter of the founder. I was nobody. I was a woman, 70s, and, and she came with an idea to put on a magazine for women, and everybody was like, let her have it, just she shuts up. It became still today, the largest magazine in its kind. So I think many people don't understand what they actually go through. A lot of the trouble that comes with wealth. And I think many would probably think that some of them are very arrogant, which might be the case. But in many cases, some of them are arrogant and nobody should talk to them because they're annoying. But many of them, what you see is just, I think, layers of defense, because all of their life, somebody wants something from them. Even when they get married, they're not sure if that's real love or is that there's something here, unless the other party is also very wealthy. So they are born with a lot of stuff that many people would say. I was sitting with the next gen that didn't want the money at all. She said, I would give up everything I have if I had my parents when I was growing up, which, by the way, is easy for her to say because she doesn't know what it's like to live with no money. So I would, balance that. But I think what families would like people to understand that they have their issues, they have their problems that money cannot solve, and some of them are amazing people, but they're just were born into something that maybe some of them didn't want, or they need to deal with what it means. So, and a lot of them do philanthropy very quietly. So they're good people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and
At the
you,
end of
you
the
hear a
day.
lot about the challenges that they do face within the family. Especially, I hear a lot about the next gen. And it's not a problem so much as it is a challenge. That there's a very different perspective on the younger generation coming up with what the previous generation had wanted to accomplish or wanted to entrench within the family. What kinds of conversations are you seeing happening now, as opposed to what was even 10 years ago? It seems like they've really changed a lot in the last few years.
I think though the same, maybe now people are more open in the sense of, oh, if my kid doesn't want to work at the business, it's fine. I'll let him have it. But I think so. That's for sure. I'll tell you what have changed and what didn't change. What have changed is that before, people thought it was okay to work like crazy and not see their kids because you got to work hard to accomplish something. In the 70s, in the 60s, they built a business. They were not at home. I remember even which movie it was on Wall Street. I'm trying to think about which major Wall Street titan it was about, where he's coming to his wife's birthday party, and his assistant gives him the gift while he's walking into the room to meet his wife. He was that busy. That has changed. I think today with technology, for sure, people get wealthy young, and people have balanced things. You go, you work out. Who worked out in the 60s? They worked their asses off. Nobody was worried about going to the gym. So I think people are way more aware that we don't want to die just building this company. We want to be healthy. We want to be with our kids. So that's for sure. What I'm not sure has changed, even though people are more open for to think about the fact that the kids might not like to work in their family business, is still that some parents would want you to be as a kid in the business. And I think sometimes without them even saying, the one kid that chooses to go to the business is somehow the preferred one, which creates a lot of other problems. So I think that is still the question. Will my kids work in the company business or not? You see different views. Some families are saying, no way. Even if they want to, I don't want them in the business because they'll end up fighting with each other. Let's just hire external folks, directors, and sell at some point. Others see it the other extreme. No, it's a family thing. I want my kids to be part of it. And some might be very disappointed if their kids are not there. So I think that probably has been there all throughout life and will still stay there. But this is what has changed.
It's interesting. You were talking earlier about all the interpersonal relationships and even philanthropy endeavors. And now you're talking about the business and all that stuff when you're talking about the intergenerational dynamics. And it's funny because when I was thinking intergenerational in the next gen dynamics, I was thinking more along the lines of philanthropy, because I've just been hearing there's a lot of desire in the younger generations to be more active in those philanthropic efforts, as opposed to what it was in previous generations, where it was more just writing checks and doing good through other people's efforts. So I don't know, have you seen anything along those lines? It sounds like you involve a lot of philanthropy throughout all of your conferences. I know it's a focus for you.
I just wanted to mention, it's funny, you mentioned something that I thought about the work that you mentioned with families. I think what you'd also find is that some of them work harder than you'd ever dream. They take their kids and they make them go through everything from the bottom up. The worst things they can do at a major company. Let's start by cleaning or by driving the trucks before you become anything. And real entrepreneurs, I think, and it's also interesting about family wealth, would never, ever stop. Money is not a question at all. Like if you look at people like Sam Zell, may he rest in peace. If you look at Larry Silverstein, the World Trade Center, the guy is 90-something years old. He's coming to work every single day, and they're tough with themselves. You got to work, you got to do this, and their kids as well. They could have retired. They could have enjoyed themselves on the beach, write books all their lives. But Lisa Silverstein, which I happen to know well, will work hard on the weekends. That's part of life. Sorry, but maybe I didn't answer that question, but I was just, could you repeat what?
No, that's fine.
if
I was just,
forgot something?
I was thinking about their philanthropic side as far as the next generation, but I'm really
Yeah.
interested too, because you have to be very protective of these people, because some of them are not just in the public spotlight, but they're in the public bullseye. depending on where they stand, either politically or maybe they've made a stand in something with their business. So there are a lot of eyes on them and what they're doing. And maybe even, I don't want to say threats, that's not where I want to go with this, but there are people who would definitely want to give them negative attention. How do you protect the integrity of those relationships that you have and protect the environment that you've created for everybody to come in and have a safe place to be, safe, have the proper boundaries in place for everybody?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, there are families that also support or not supporting different issues with the current government or not, and they are really worried about different aspects of what they do. And the way we wanted to handle all of that is not to have a side ever. We try not to invite politicians, not to be right, not to be left wing, not to be religious, not to be non-religious. Be as just open to everybody. No media. We don't allow media to attend our events, which could have been great
Sure would have.
marketing, but it is what it is. No media is allowed. No, we don't even take videos for ourselves. No
Oh.
videos in our conferences. Nothing. We just would take a couple of pictures. So I think the fact that that there's nobody that's too radical there makes it safer, I guess, for families. And it's funny because in my business, you meet so different kinds of families. We're in Texas, we're in New York, we're in Palo Alto, we're in LA, we're in London, we're in Singapore, we're in Dubai. So it's funny when you hear the point of views of different families. I mean, they all have the same things they challenge with, but then of course comes the culture and their personal belief. It's interesting to see all of those different views.
I bet it is. And do you ever see it? I can't imagine you see a whole lot of clashing in these kinds of environments between all the political views. And I would imagine there's a pretty civil environment because they share this unique status isn't the word I want to use, but I'm going to go with that right now. But they share kind of this unique status among each other.
Yes, I mean, there are some families that will avoid families that have issues with them. Those that are getting into different legal issues, different IRS issues. So there are definitely families that would stay away from folks that have anything like that attached to them. But otherwise, I don't see any particular struggle between them.
Mhm.
No, not in where I am.
Yeah. Now, one thing I remember you saying, I can't remember if I read this or I saw it in person, but you've said something to the effect of these institutional investors, they allocate, but the family offices build. And they're growing businesses. They're actively growing, and it was a reference to society as a whole. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that perspective, because I thought it was really enlightening, just based on my conversations with allocators versus family offices versus even high net worth individuals and folks. How do you perceive family offices as being those kind of builders?
Well, because that's exactly what they do. It's institutionals manage other people's money. Families manage their own. Huge difference. Families are not, most of them, in a hurry, right? You might be a startup company or whatever. You go to a VC, they might push you to sell or to do a move that you don't want to do because they want to exit. They need to deliver results to their investors. Family will have a way different vision. They'll be like, no, let's take your time because I know you're going to get there and it's fine. Take another 3 years. Who cares? You need a bridge loan. Okay, you got your first investment from a VC. If you're gonna call the VC again, they'll be like, okay, you gotta meet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and meet all those boxes. And what if you don't meet all those boxes? You're calling a family. You have a relationship with Joe. I need your help. I need this amount of money for the next year. There's an opportunity coming, and I want to be ready. Could you help me out? Sure. I mean, if it makes sense. So it's smart money. It's patient money. And when they're investing, and when it comes to building companies, for sure, there's if you check a company that's traded, if you want to compare apples to apples, compare family-owned traded businesses to similar non-family owned businesses, you'd see the difference. The family-owned are doing probably way better because they really, really care. By the way, it also has a downside because nobody wants to sell. They don't want to sell the company because they're attached to it, so they think the valuation is way higher than it really is. So there's also that side. But definitely the families are the ones who build. It's a completely different universe from institutional investors, which are investment machines. Here, there's a lot to it. You know what? What about you mentioned philanthropy? Some families will invest in an investment that has a good impact on the world, on society, on the environment, even if the ROI is lower than another investment. They will not touch something that they might think pollutes the oceans, but would give them great results. They don't care. So what? I don't need the money that bad. I'll go and invest the other guy. I'll make probably less, but I'm supporting what I believe in. So, many professional investors don't care about that. I mean, they care about making money, which is what they need to do. So I've seen investments also of families because they found out that the company has every 10th employee the handicap. That's the policy of the company. They fell in love with the company. That's it. Game's over. Families can invest out of passion investment. They might meet you, look you in the eye and say, okay, this guy is completely crazy, but I love him. He's got the guts, he's got the power. I'm gonna back that horse. And by the way, many very famous companies became very strong, like a Mobileye. I sat with one of the founders, and they told me when we came, the companies that do the sensors, for the cars, no VC wanted to look at us because they didn't understand where do we fall. We're not exactly this, we're not exactly that. And so that's how families build and also how families invest.
What do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned? I mean, you've talked to so many people who have such a vast array of experiences that have literally shaped our world as we know it. What are your biggest takeaways as far as what do you think is a lesson that you will carry with you for life that you otherwise wouldn't have if not for these discussions?
That no matter what you do, I think at the end of the day, all these families will tell you what's most important is the family. At the end of the day, if there's something going on with the family, that's more important right now with the business. And we leave all of those grand things for that. So that's one. Another is dedication to the business. I've seen so many families that just worked very hard, believed in their business, and it's not being spoiled, and it's just working hard and looking and the long horizon. I think you take care of the company for the next generation, not just for the next couple of years, just to have an exit, what you might not see with the new wealth. That's another discussion, new wealth versus old wealth as well. Sometimes you're a tech guy, you just want to make a couple of bucks and get out, and that's it, which is kind of cool. And I think the ones we're talking about, the brands that the 7-Elevens, the Tabascos, it's just a different DNA,
I would imagine the new wealth is very, very different approaching their investment, their philanthropic endeavors. They're very different in their vision of what they're doing at that point, because they're not thinking about who's given to them at that point. They're probably thinking about what they built themselves and what they want to build for the future. Would that be accurate to say, or what's your perspective?
I think so. I think there are different kinds of entrepreneurs. I think most entrepreneurs, especially tech, something in their DNA, in their heads, I think just will never stop. But again, like Larry Silverstein, it's real estate. They would never stop because it's something in the DNA. It's something that's about getting higher and keep on pushing rather than just another. Making money was back then. Now it's so I think entrepreneurship, even with new money, some of them would just keep on going, and some of them would just make one exit and leave me alone. And these are not the real entrepreneurs. I think these are guys who worked, made money, and now just want to take it easy, which is fine. But of course, there are different issues. I mean, my club, the Family Office Circle, chaired by Lisa Silverstein, by the way, one of the ideas is let's mix new money with old money, because new money can learn from old money about legacy, next generation, how do you transfer wealth, or value stuff they have no idea. They didn't even have time to think about. While the old money might want to invest with the new money because of what I just said. They never stop. They're at the cutting edge of their game. They're go-getters. You probably want to back them, but they don't mix enough because there are different upbringing, different cultures, different communities. So it's part of what we do in the club is exactly that: mix new money and old money, mix different stages of growth.
You mentioned the drive, and I've just got to ask this. I know I have one more question after this, but regarding the drive, it's a chicken or the egg thing to me. Do they have the drive and that's why they're successful, or do they develop the drive as a result of their success and they've trained themselves that way to continue in that direction?
Great question. I think it depends on the person. It's a very personal thing. Some, like to say the first generation builds, the second kind of still maintains, and the third ruins it. It's not always like that. I think sometimes the second generation takes the company 10 times higher. If you want to look it up, look at Carol Levin Bernick and Alberto Culver that was sold to Unilever. And there are many other stories like that. Um, but I think, the first generation, usually it depends, again, new money or old money. The old money that is now old money grew up usually in poverty, and that's a great drive. My drive, by the way, is completely stupid, but it works. My drive many times is just because in spite. Have you seen the one Curb Your Enthusiasm about the
No.
spite stores? Have you seen that episode? So you should. It's very funny. It's about those who open the restaurant just to mess up, because yeah, he went to a coffee shop and they annoyed him, so he opened another coffee shop right next door. He didn't care about losing money, just to annoy him. And some of my decisions how to grow the company are stupid like that. I went to Canada and everybody's polite. There was just one arrogant guy who told me, "You never make it here. Families are too private here, and even if you make it here, we know everybody already." I said, "Is that so?" And then I decided, okay, I'm going full speed after the Canadian market. That was my drive. And I sent him pictures from the full house, and from Easy Shop, the founder of the Four Seasons, speaking at the Four Seasons in Toronto. So some of my decisions are weird like that. But my point is that you see families sometimes that would try harder to prove themselves, and the next generation would build it and take it to a different level. And it's a very personal thing. I forgot what was the question actually. She could remind me to finish.
Well, I think I started with the chicken or the egg. Which one is it? Is it the drive first, or is it they develop the drive over time?
That's where I got complicated. Yeah, because we talked about the drive
Yeah.
sometimes. So I think that the old money, a lot of them were growing in hell, war, poverty, and that drive that I'm never going back there. Which, by the way, also influenced me and many other people. You just want to succeed because of that. So it's the drive. Others that were born into it, it's either the drive to show that they're as good as the first generation, or the exact opposite, not to care at all. And then it's just to keep what's going on going. I think tech people are very driven. You see the excitement in their eyes. So I think you see both. I think you see both. It depends on which family, who's the person involved, how many years the business is, how excited the next gen is about the first gen's company. So I think you see both.
But it's not like one family. You clearly have all these people who are driven and that is literally their DNA is to do that. And then this family, it's just, you have one person who's just unusually driven and continues that path to success.
I think again, I think you see again both. I think you have families that are like cults. When you look at In and Out, when you look at Chick-fil-A, and I think they are very, very serious companies that the drive just keeps on going from one generation to another. But again, I think there are different stories that would, it really, really depends. But it starts with a crazy drive and having and biting bullets if you need to, and rolling with the punches and keep on going because you want to get to places. Lots of Jewish people who came and built empire after running away from Nazi Germany. So again, I think you see a mixture of types of families and
But
businesses.
anyway, at the end of all this, what do you, because you're building more than a business here, it's a community, it's a legacy for you too. So what do you hope you accomplish when it's all said and done? People look back and they say, I went to all Denny's events and he helped with such and so forth. What do you hope people are saying at that point?
I hope that we managed to really create a conversation that matters and that brought people to be open about how they build the companies and share. And without, again, I don't like all the mumbo jumbo crap that sounds funny in my world of wealthy people. But that's why I think we create a different kind of conversation, and that's what I like to have in my conversations. And now we have the conferences, we have the club, as I've mentioned to you. I'll be hosting soon an interesting podcast as well. I think all these different discussions, different forums, I think will create a community that's hopefully will be very, very interesting. And
Well, this has been very interesting and different for me too, Denny. So I really appreciate you taking the time. You've been very generous, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next time we run into each other.
Thank you, Matt, and I'd love to do more of those.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Purpose Driven Capital podcast. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Are you ready to align your money with your mission? Discover the Purpose Driven Capital framework, access practical tools, and build meaningful connections to grow your movement and multiply your impact at purposedrivencapital.co. The views and opinions expressed in this show are solely those of the individual speaking and do not reflect the views or opinions of Honey Hive Capital, any broker-dealer, investment advisory firm, or its sponsors. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing in this content, nor any communications from it, should be treated as constituting financial, investment, legal, tax, or other advice of any kind, or as a recommendation to buy or sell an interest with respect to any investment. We look forward to you joining us next time.